Well, I appreciate your time, and I want to wrap up with one more question. And this is perfect segue. You talking about how hard it's been and all the things that you've learned on the way. So, what advice would you have for a high school student that might be 17 or 18, or a college student who lasted more than 48 hours and is in school? What would you say to those types of people who are fearful of taking that first step of actually going from I have an idea to I want to create? And what do you say to someone who's really fearful of starting something and constantly navigating through uncertainty versus having like job stability?
Hmm. Well, the number one thing about fear, like I can't give any surface level kind of piece of advice here. The thing about fear is that there's a why for why it exists. And I think in order to like actually solve the problems that anybody has in their lives, then there needs to be like a why. Like, why do you even have this fear in the first place? And typically, the underlying reason for that is like, okay, a certain type of like fear of judgment, like fear of failure, all those sorts of things, like fear of getting out of your comfort zone, for example, fear of like learning something new, even because there's like this understanding that you're getting better and maybe you don't like want to, or you just are scared to. Um, so like that would be my number one advice, is just to like assess where is this fear coming from in the first place? Like, why do I have this? And it should come from a place of like observation, not logical thinking of like, where did this come from, but just like truly feeling why, am I going through this right now? Why am I feeling the things that I feel? Um, and assessing kind of like, okay, the answer to that. Like once you get to the root cause of your fear, um, then things become easier. Kind of like just goes away. This is something that I've noticed too. Like even when I get nervous about something or anxious about something, which doesn't happen often, but when it does, it's like I don't want to feel this. Like, and I'm not going to like overwork myself to like get rid of this feeling, because that's not going to work. I'm not going to go to the gym and try to get rid of this feeling, because the feeling is always going to come back, right? The feeling of anxiety of whatever you're going through is always going to be there until the root cause is figured out. So that's what I would recommend. And a lot of people will make the excuse of it's risky, right? That's just kind of like something to say to cover up the actual fear that somebody's going through. So that's my number one advice, honestly. It's like, why? It's to ask yourself that. And many people don't, because it requires a lot of like time to not think, but just to observe and be quiet, which most people don't do. I mean, even sometimes for me, it's hard to do that too, because my brain was like, why are you taking the time to do this? You should be working on your startup. So it's like, it's a lot of, it's a challenge as well, but it's life changing. And also like, I mean, come on, being young and like wanting to start something, there's no better time to do it, because you don't have any responsibilities to like, you don't have a family to raise, right? You don't have kids to provide for. So it's like, it's just kind of you. Like you always have something to fall back on, like getting a job anywhere. Um, whether it be like Chipotle or whatever, like money could always be made, right? But yeah, I mean, that's what I would say. But it also has to do with like DNA as well. If you are ambitious in the first place, there's less likely of a chance of you even being scared or having those risks. You're just gonna do it, right? Like, I don't know. That's my personal thought on that.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very cool answer. I personally like can resonate with that answer. My dad told me always growing up that, lots of people talk about your IQ, your EQ, then like there's always a new word, right? Like it was grit, and whatever it is. But he always stuck with self-awareness. That's the foundation to
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, to what you're gonna do and to, figure out who you are and figure out your fears and why you don't want to take risk. And I heard a great quote that I forgot who said it, but he said, in today's world, it's riskier to not take risks than to take risk. So
It, it's riskier to not take risk than to take risk.
yeah.
Do you know why? Why he
Well,
said that?
because what he was talking about was how a lot of the times when we don't want to take risk is because we're giving into our fear versus
Uh-huh.
leveraging all of the possibility and opportunity that we live with today.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's true. There's so much opportunity. Like if you're worried about risk, like or just not failing, but like um just how hard it may potentially be or whatever, then like, oh my God, like it's never been easier than it is today to be an entrepreneur. So it's like,
Yeah, you know,
I don't know.
I'm laughing at this whole no code stuff. I'm like, the smart people made no code for dummies like me, and now anything's possible.
Literally, literally, literally. I would be more worried, like, if that was going through my head, I don't know. I'd be more so of like, do I even become an entrepreneur? Because like it's just there's a different DNA that entrepreneurs have, to be quite honest. It's like, you know, you just chase after things, right? No matter how you may feel about them. That's like the truth of it. So but yeah, yeah, start that business.
Well,
I hate giving surface level advice. Like I take that back. But anyway, yes, self-awareness is super important.
yeah, no, well,
Very important for anything.
I very much appreciate that advice. I appreciate your time. And
Yep.
what you're doing is absolutely incredible. The growth that you've had, the way you've used social media, you know, the energy, the vibe that you bring, like it was such a great conversation. I'm so glad that we got to connect today. So thank you so much for joining us. And I'm looking forward to everything that you do. And I'm about to download this Corecircle app, so I no longer have to use the Notes app.
I was about to say, like right after that kind of outro, like, yo, you better like stop using the Notes app and try out Corecircle. Like, I'd love to know your thoughts about it.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. And then everyone tuning in, thank y'all so much for joining us on this week's episode of the show. You know, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow,
Survive.
Yeah, survive, also
survive.
survive.
Yes.
But yeah, thank y'all so much for tuning in. We will catch y'all next week. Thank
Yes.
y'all.